Not that you're sorry that she's missing. Not that you've been trying to help me all day find her, but you just wanted me to tell her I don't know.
I don't know.
Are you a sorry piece of that you want me to tell her that?
Yeah, told me that he killed Lee and cut off his head.
Did he tell you how he killed him?
He said that.
Corey Gregory had the chance to get a new sentence because of a court ruling that took issue with such long sentences for young offenders. A judge granted him the right to have his sentence reconsidered today.
And a lot has actually changed in the 17 years since that murder. Gregory now goes by the name Harley Quinn and uses she, her pronouns.
I don't know anyone that would want to hurt her. He was as nice a person as there is.
Was she moving soon? Did you know anything about her?
Yeah, she was going to be moving out today. I mean, why would anyone do that?
When you listen to that interview of a man being interviewed about a missing college student, you may think that he is truly distraught about the whereabouts of his neighbor, someone he even considered a friend. But things are not as they seem, and this man is not as good of an actor as he thinks he is.
It's gonna be a missing person. Lauren Giddings.
Investigators desperate search for answers.
You used to watch her come in and out of her apartment, didn't you?
No.
Now you're lying.
Leads to the interrogation of a suspect that just won't break.
How can you remember a statute and you can't remember what you did 2 days ago?
I don't know.
This is the case of Lauren Giddings, a 27-year-old woman from Maryland who had gone to Georgia to attend law school at Mercer University. Lauren was, by many people's definition, the full package. She was beautiful and kind, as well as very intelligent and driven. She had big plans for her future and was willing to work hard to make them happen. Her whole family was very proud of her.
Lauren going to college was huge. No one in our family had ever been to college.
In June of 2011, all of Lauren's hard work throughout the years was very close to paying off. She had finished her studies, and the only thing left to do was to take the bar exam. Lauren lived in an apartment that was right next to the university. It was very convenient for her, and it was home to several other graduate students that she knew as well. One of these fellow graduates was a man named Stephen McDaniel. Stephen lived right across from Lauren, and they talked on occasion. He had also asked her out once, but she had told him no because she already had a boyfriend that she had been talking to for a few years. On the weekend leading up to June 30th of 2011, Lauren had told everyone that she was going to be totally preoccupied with studying for the bar exam, that she was going to be doing that the entire weekend. But when the weekend passed and nobody had heard from her, those closest to her began to get worried. Lauren was very close to her family, and it was not like her to not check in with them. But at the same time, they knew that she was likely just studying. However, as they would soon find out, not even Lauren's school friends had seen or heard from her, and that was definitely out of the ordinary. In fact, one friend had even called the cops after she went over to Lauren's apartment and nobody came to the door. But after cops checked out the scene and didn't see a sign of a break-in, they left. As the hours passed and still nobody had heard from Lauren, her friends were getting more and more worried and decided to reach out to her sister, Caitlin, and let her know that they were concerned about Lauren.
On Wednesday, one of her friends called me and asked me if I had talked to Lauren because she said I called, her phone was dead. So of course I immediately picked up the phone and called, and her phone was dead. And I did think that was weird.
Caitlin has called everyone she can think of that might know where Lauren is, and she has had no luck.
I had called her boyfriend, I had called friends in Atlanta, friends here, called hospitals in the area searching for her.
Caitlin knew of a secret key that her sister had hidden, so she gave one of Lauren's friends permission to go get it and use it to get into Lauren's apartment and check things out. The friend did this, and when she looked around, she quickly realized that everything Lauren would have taken with her if she had left her apartment was still there. This included her wallet and school ID. To Lauren's friends and family, this was basically confirmation that something was terribly wrong.
The morning that we went up there, we were able to gain access to her apartment. Her car was there, her keys were there at the apartment, her pocketbook was there, Her cell phone was there, her laptop was there.
So Lauren was officially reported as a missing person. Law enforcement began searching for her and asking around to see if anyone living nearby may have seen or heard from her. One of the first people who was interviewed by the local news about Lauren's disappearance was Stephen McDaniel. Considering he had known Lauren for a while and lived right across the street from her, it made sense that maybe he would have some info that could be helpful. He seemed completely willing to help in any way that he could and do an interview.
The only thing we can think is that maybe she went out running and someone snatched her.
One of the other people that law enforcement was interested in talking to from the very beginning was David Whitmire, one of Lauren's classmates. He also lived right by her.
You were in the graduating class with Lauren?
Right.
Giddings, and you knew her, right?
Yeah.
And y'all live in the same apartment complex.
Mm-hmm. She and I would end up together a lot, simply because of we were going to the same spot after class.
They also talked to all of Lauren's closest friends on campus.
Do you have a key to her apartment, or did you know where she hides the key?
I knew where she hides the key.
And did you go inside her apartment?
Yes, last night.
And did everything appear to be undisturbed last night?
Yes.
There were no signs of forced entry into Lauren's apartment, and this meant that if someone had taken Lauren, it had to be someone she knew and let into her apartment, or someone who had their own key to get into her apartment on their own. Could it be Lauren's boyfriend, David?
I'm asking you for your help.
Yes, sir.
This is your girlfriend.
I understand.
Okay. Because we can't find her. There's people telling me this relationship is on the rocks or not a good relationship.
David acknowledged that this relationship with Lauren had its problems, just like all relationships do, but he had never once been violent toward her or done anything to hurt her. Cops weren't going to overlook anyone when it came to potential persons of interest, including Stephen McDaniel, who agreed to come into the local station for a more in-depth interview.
With me is her next door neighbor who lives in apartment 4. Can I get your last name?
McDaniel. Stephen McDaniel.
When was the last time you think you seen Lauren?
It was either last week or the week before that. I was coming back from bar prep and I was driving back and I saw her going out to run.
He and Lauren were both officers in the same social group, which was an organization through the law school.
Stephen insists that he doesn't have any ideas about where Lauren could be and that he doesn't have any other information that he hasn't yet told the cops.
Is there anything that you could tell me today or add to your statement that could help me locate Lauren?
I can't think of anything. I mean, we looked around to see if there was a note or if there was anything, but there was just nothing that we could find to try and figure out where she was.
Law enforcement had already combed through Lauren's apartment looking for clues. Now it was time to look outside and around the apartment. Unfortunately, they would not have to look far from Lauren's apartment to make an incredibly disturbing discovery.
They started looking a little closer around outside and discovered the trash bag that was in one of the dumpsters, and once they were able to open the bag and look in it, discovered her body.
But it was not all of Lauren's body. It was only the torso.
Found just her torso. There was no limbs attached, and of course her head was missing as well, so we just had her torso.
There had been many people gathered around Lauren's apartment complex at the time that this discovery had been made, including the press, so it didn't take long for the tragic news to spread.
We were just all there, and my uncle walked over, he lives across the street, and was kind of standing in the corner. And he said, well, did you check the news? And we're like, no. And what is it? What is it? Well, did you check? And my aunt was like, you need to just tell us what you're talking about. And he said they found a body.
Because the head was no longer attached, cops couldn't immediately confirm that the torso they found belonged to Lauren. But considering that it was found in the dumpster outside of her apartment, and she was the only one around known to be missing, it did not seem likely that it could have been anyone else.
Never did I doubt that was her body, but that was my mom's first, are you sure it's her? Like, could it be, They came here and did a DNA test on my mom to match her.
It was soon confirmed that the body did belong to Lauren. But who had done this? And where were the rest of her remains? Meanwhile, things were more intense than ever at the crime scene, where law enforcement were searching to see what else Lauren's killer may have tried to get rid of. One very intriguing thing about the trash can that Lauren's body had been found in was that it was supposed to have already been picked up that morning by a trash truck, but the trash truck happened to be running behind that day. This was good news for law enforcement because now they could check all the other trash cans around to see if there were other pieces of evidence stashed nearby. At the scene of the crime was Stephen McDaniel, who was chatting away with reporters about the search for Lauren. But he didn't know that just moments before, law enforcement had made yet another startling discovery. Watch this clip closely. You'll see Stephen's demeanor change completely when the reporter tells him that there has been an update in the case.
Do you know anybody that, any enemies she might have had, somebody that might want to hurt her?
No, we don't know where she is.
The reporter did not realize that Stephen did not yet know that the body had been found in the trash can.
What about in the parking lot area? I know they've been doing a lot of, I think that's where they have recovered the body or whatever they recovered from there.
Body?
Had you heard anything? Had you seen anything there? Had you seen anything there? I mean, we don't know if this is the same person. You know what I mean? Like, they took out a body there earlier. We don't know if it's the same person or not. So that's how we're trying to ask people if they know who lived there. Are you okay, sir?
I think I need to sit down.
Okay.
But Stephen knew that the body was Lauren's and not some other person's. You can see that in the moment that he also knew he was in serious trouble. Suddenly, he flipped a switch again, this time crying and putting on an elaborate performance, claiming that he wished he had been able to do more to protect Lauren.
Yeah, I heard something. Maybe I could have helped.
Obviously, Stephen's behavior in that interview caught a lot of people's attention, including law enforcement, who found it to be very suspicious. Law enforcement were already beginning to look into Stephen on a deeper level, and they had a lot of questions for him. Stephen agreed to come into the station willingly and do an interview. It would soon become clear that Stephen's chatty demeanor had completely changed. He was now responding using as few words as possible.
I need to know about this girl right here. You know her?
Yes.
Does she live next door to you?
Yes.
When's the last time you seen her?
2 or 3 weeks ago.
All of a sudden, Stephen had become eerily quiet and emotionless. The abrupt shift in personality was obvious, and it was suspicious.
Just tell me what happened, brother.
I don't know.
Do you even care that no one can find her?
Yes.
Earlier today, me and you sit here and talk normal. What's going on with you now? Why are you acting like this?
I don't understand.
The kind of blank stare, very short answers.
Cops had also heard from other people that this new way that Stephen was acting was not typical for him at all.
Stephen, they say you're so talkative, buddy, that you're always so friendly. You stop in and say hello, and you talk. Why is it that everything that we get from you is yes, no, or I don't know?
I don't know.
So, not only had Stephen suddenly clammed up, but he also didn't give the cops permission to search his apartment. If he truly had nothing to do with Lauren's disappearance, wouldn't it seem that he wouldn't have a problem with his apartment being searched?
I think someone took her.
How do you think somebody would take her? If somebody did take her?
When she was running.
The more that the cops looked into Stephen, the more that they would realize what a loner he really was. He spent the majority of his time at home alone playing video games, he rarely bathed, and he had never been in a relationship with anyone before. The cops believed that Stephen had been attracted to Lauren and had been watching her, maybe even obsessing over her for a long time. They also knew that Stephen had previously been rejected by Lauren.
You told me about how you like to look at porn on the internet. You expressed to me that you're a virgin, correct?
Yes.
What happened to Lauren?
I don't know.
You like her, don't you?
She's my friend.
Did you ever think about having sex with her?
No.
Detectives began asking Stephen about the body they found in the trash can, and still, Stephen remains emotionless.
You know there was a body found in the trash can next to the apartments.
Yes.
Who do something to somebody and throw them in a trash can?
I don't know.
The cops know that if Stephen was the one who killed Lauren and put her body in the trash, he likely thought that it would have been picked up before anyone would have noticed. It doesn't seem like he even considered the possibility that the cops would find it first, and that they would ask him about it. He doesn't have any sort of lie or story to give them.
You know there was a body found in the trash can next to the apartments.
Yes.
Who would do something to somebody and throw them in a trash can?
I don't know.
When the cops do get permission to search Stephen's apartment, they end up finding a lot of interesting things, including several different firearms, a samurai sword, and multiple blades. They also found a lot of seriously explicit CP on one of Stephen's hard drives.
What do you need all these weapons for?
To have.
Why? There's a reason why. Were you molested as a child?
No.
It's time to turn up the heat with Stephen McDaniel. Cops believe he is Lauren's killer, but they still need concrete evidence to prove it.
And everybody in Macon knows you knows because you got your sorry ass on the news and told everybody.
Why would you not be honest with me?
I am being honest.
Stephen, it just doesn't feel like it, buddy.
What is it going to take to get Stephen to break?
What do I need to tell her family?
I don't know.
That's what you want me to tell her mother and her father, is that you don't know.
I don't know.
Stephen might not be giving anything away with his words, but cops are still slowly building a case against him in other ways.
You smell like you've been cleaning up, like you've been using cleaner to clean up. You've been using some kind of cleaner to clean up your apartment, hadn't you?
No.
Law enforcement have already found bottles of bleach and other kinds of cleaning products inside of Stephen's apartment, but they are still pushing for a confession. They hope to do that by making him think about Lauren's mother and how desperately she wanted answers about what happened to her daughter.
Not that you're sorry that she's missing. Not that you've been trying to help me all day find her, but you just wanted me to tell her I don't know.
I don't know.
Are you a sorry piece of that you want me to tell her that?
Meanwhile, as other officers continued searching Stephen's apartment, they would find camera footage on a card that proves that he had been secretly photographing Lauren. But that's not all. In one of his drawers, they also found a pair of Lauren's underwear that had her DNA on them. Stephen had already attempted to scrub any and all evidence from inside his apartment, but with the right light, detectives could still find anything. Upon taking a closer look at the bathtub in Stephen's apartment, they found lots of tiny cuts and scratches that had been made on the enamel. They believed that the bathtub was likely where the dismembering had taken place, and that a sharp tool, possibly a hacksaw, was what caused the tiny scratches. Law enforcement would later find a hacksaw in the apartment complex's maintenance shed. The shed was usually kept locked, but inside of Stephen's apartment, they found a copy of the key. The hacksaw was tested, and it did in fact have trace amounts of Lauren's blood and DNA on it. Cops were ultimately able to trace that hacksaw directly back to Stephen when they found a receipt for it in his trash. They also found Walmart surveillance footage from the store that showed Stephen making the purchase. At this point, it didn't matter if Stephen confessed or not. They had the evidence that they needed to arrest him.
We know what you did to her.
I didn't do anything.
Well, that's what you say.
Stephen was arrested and charged with Lauren's murder. Detectives were able to determine that Stephen had managed to get his hands on a key to Lauren's apartment, and that's how he got inside. He killed her and then took her back to his own apartment where he dismembered her. Stephen would later be offered a plea deal. As part of the deal, he would have to explain in court exactly what he did to Lauren. He admitted that he went into Lauren's apartment in the middle of the night and that she immediately knew it was him, even though he was wearing a mask. She told him to get the out. He jumped on her, put his hands around her throat, and squeezed until he was sure she was dead. Before her death, she had pleaded with him to stop, but he continued anyway. Part of Stephen's motivation was that he knew that Lauren was done with school and would soon be moving out. He wouldn't be able to stalk her anymore, so he decided that this was his last chance to do this. Stephen was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. In March of 2022, he filed a complaint against his former attorney and tried to have his conviction overturned. But for now, he remains behind bars. Even though he was given the possibility of parole, there are obviously many people who hope that the day will never come that the man who confessed to this sickening murder and dismemberment of this poor young woman will never be free again.
Also breaking tonight, the Lawrence teenager who killed and beheaded a classmate was sentenced for the crimes, and he came face to face with the victim's family.
Matthew Borges was sentenced to life behind bars today with a chance of parole after 30 years.
Teenage love and teenage jealousy. These are two things that, when mixed together, can lead to major drama. But in this case, they led to deadly consequences. 15-year-old Matthew Borges had a reputation for being an extremely jealous person. You could ask any girl that he'd ever dated or so much been involved with, and they would tell you stories to confirm that. One person that Matthew was especially jealous of was his own classmate and supposed friend, Lee Manuel Villora Paulino. Lilani De Jesus, a girl who Matthew dated during his freshman year of high school, said that after the two of them broke up, he asked her if she was talking to any other guys, mentioning Lee in particular. Another girl named Stephanie Soriano, who had also dated Matthew, said that he once got angry with her just because she said hi to Lee. Clearly, Matthew had a major complex when it came to Lee. Someone who was clearly well-liked and someone he viewed as competition. But nobody could have seen him taking his dislike for Lee to the horrific level that he ultimately did. In November of 2016, Matthew and a few of his friends devised a plan to rob Lee. Matthew would invite Lee down to a local river to smoke with him. When Lee was distracted, the others would go and steal Lee's wallet and a few of his other belongings. But somewhere along the line, Matthew decided that robbing Lee was not enough for him. He wanted him dead. So after the two had smoked along the bank of the Merrimack River, Matthew ended up taking a blade and brutally killing Lee, who was unarmed and never saw it coming. Later, when Lee never made it home and was reported missing by his family, detectives learned that Matthew was likely one of the last people who had spoken to him, so they questioned him about it that day.
That day I went to school. It was a regular day. Saw Lee at lunch. And then after lunch, I went home.
The voice of then 15-year-old Matthew Borges telling police about the last day he saw Lee Paulino alive, Friday, November 18th, 2016.
Matthew admitted that he had smoked with Lee by the river, but that as far as he knew, Lee had gone home afterward.
Did you expect him to go home that day? Yeah. Okay, so it was, when did you find out that?
When I was at work the next day. Before I went to work, the girl I was talking to told me, she said, "Have you seen Lee?" I was like, "Yeah, I was with him the other day." And I was like, "Why? What happened?" She said, "He's missing." I was like, "Wow."
From the beginning, even before he was seriously considered a suspect, Matthew acted pretty suspiciously and made it clear that he wasn't comfortable answering questions about Lee.
During the police interview on November 29th, 2016, before the mutilated body was found, Borges becomes defensive and evasive when questioned about Lee Paulino, his habits, and possible whereabouts.
Matthew was paranoid, and he had good reason to be. He was the only one that knew what had actually happened to Lee.
I've been in interviews for 7 straight hours with people, and they lied for 6.5 and 59 minutes of them, and then the last minute of the interview, they tell the truth.
Okay.
Okay? You yourself said the other day, this story really doesn't sound too good.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks after Lee's disappearance, a dog walker would make a horrific discovery. It was Lee's mutilated body floating alongside the riverbank. The teen had been dismembered. But that's not all. One of Matthew's friends would also come forward and admit to law enforcement that Matthew had confessed to him what he had done to Lee.
Yeah, told me that he killed Lee and cut off his head.
Did he tell you how he killed him?
He said that.
Matthew would soon be arrested. Despite being only 15 years old, he was charged as an adult in Lee's murder and was later convicted. Jealousy was the only motive that was ever really determined. Throughout the trial, Matthew took to the stand himself to testify or to discuss what happened. He was later given the most severe sentence possible under the law. This was something that Lee's family had asked the judge to grant them.
So Matthew Borges is now set to serve the maximum sentence for killing his 16-year-old classmate. It's something that teen's family asked for in an emotional statement read to the court this afternoon.
It is ordered by the court that he be punished by confinement for a term of life.
Matthew Borges, now 18, silent as he was sentenced, convicted of the 2016 murder in the first degree.
Lee's family members were pleased by the verdict, though they acknowledged that it would never give them what they really wanted, which was more time with this young man whose life was stolen so soon. Do you think it's fair that Matthew was given the possibility of parole and will probably be free one day? Let us know what you think in the comments.
Convicted killer Sarah Kolb's request for resentencing has been denied. Kolb killed 16-year-old Adrianne Reynolds in 2005. She was convicted and sentenced to 53 years in prison. Kolb's defense team argued the sentence was cruel and unusual punishment, a de facto life sentence handed down to a juvenile.
If you've looked into the eyes of Sarah Kolb, or the person who was once known as Corey Gregory, you have looked into the eyes of true evil. This is the disturbing story of the murder of Adrianne Reynolds, which took place in 2005 in East Moline, Illinois. Adrianne was someone who had high hopes for the future and had so much going for her. Her dream was to serve her country by becoming a Marine, and she was on the path to do that in 2004 while she was attending Black Hawk College outreach so she could get her GED before enlisting. Unfortunately, it was while attending school there that she would meet two people who would change the course of her life in the most tragic way. These people were Sarah Kolb and her former boyfriend, Corey Gregory. At one point, Adrianne ended up asking Corey out. This was something that really angered Sarah, despite the fact that they were no longer together. Sarah and Adrianne would then become nothing short of enemies. Yet on January 21st of 2005, when both Corey and Sarah invited Adrianne to go out with them to lunch, Adrianne accepted. Another one of Adrianne's friends, a man named Sean McKittrick, also came along. Not long after the group arrived at Taco Bell, an argument broke out between Adrianne and Sarah. This made Sean uncomfortable. When he asked them to stop, Sarah told him that he should just leave, so he immediately did. As soon as Sean was gone, both Corey and Sarah turned on Adrianne. Corey held down Adrianne while Sarah tied a belt around Adrianne's neck to cut off her air supply, eventually killing her. When they were done with this grisly task, Corey and Sarah took Adrianne's body to Sarah's grandparents' house where they planned to dispose of it using gasoline. But this proved to be harder than they anticipated. After trying for hours and having no luck, they eventually enlisted the help of a local teenage boy named Nathan Goddett. He was all too happy to take part in this horrific, evil task. Nathan used a saw that he had taken from his grandfather to remove Adrianne's limbs and head. Once this was done, they stuffed the rest of the remains in garbage bags, packed them into a car, and dropped them off at a local state park. Adrianne's father would later report her missing, and her dismembered remains would be discovered just days later on January 26th of 2005. Luckily, there was DNA evidence on the remains that was easily traced back to Corey Gregory and eventually Sarah Kolb. On February 1st of 2005, they were both arrested and charged with Adrianne's murder and pleaded not guilty. Sarah was the first to face justice, but the jury presiding over her case could not come to a unanimous decision about whether or not she was truly guilty. This led to a mistrial. She would go to trial again in February of 2006, and this time she would be convicted on all counts and sentenced to 53 years in total behind bars. Corey would later plead guilty as a result and would receive 45 years behind bars. 17 years later, that sentence was reconsidered.
Corey Gregory had the chance to get a new sentence because of a court ruling that took issue with such long sentences for young offenders. A judge granted him the right to have his sentence reconsidered today.
And a lot has actually changed in the 17 years since that murder. Gregory now goes by the name Harley Quinn and uses she, her pronouns.
The person who now goes by Harley Quinn was ultimately denied a lesser sentence. As for Adrianne's family, they are left to wonder about the future that might have been if it had not been so tragically stolen.
Probably what would she be doing today? You know, she loved to sing, and maybe she would have went to American Idol or one of them things, or at least tried anyway. Just hug your kids, because you never know.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.